Welcome or welcome back to Exploring the Unseen, our online retreat. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Karen Brown. This is the second in our unfolding series that I'm co-hosting together with my lovely colleague, Leslie Zare. So this time in Exploring the Unseen 2, our sub-theme is Answering the Divine Feminine Call. And Leslie and I really feel that in times like these, hearing this call, responding to it, and supporting the divine feminine to rise in each of us and in the collective has never been more needed or more urgent. So, with that, we hope you're enjoying this experience so far. We have so many inspiring guests for you who are offering beautiful gifts, processes, insights. My guest today is Althia Sophia. So let me introduce you to her now. Althia Sophia is a writer, mythologist, somatic intimacy practitioner, and whisperer of sacred wisdom. Her highly acclaimed books, courses, transmissions, and workshops focus on the development of the mythic imagination and the relevance of intimacy, truth, and courage to the personal, cultural, and environmental problems we face today. Her way of ministering these myths is through movement, bringing them alive individually and with others to become personally informed and alive. She has just completed working on Mary Magdalene's audio guide to the south of France, an evocative and expressive partnering with the mythic imagination and the land itself, and is currently finishing off her latest book, The Grail King. Althia lives in the Cathar region of southern France with her husband and mother. Together, they run Les Contes, a B&B at the base of Montsegur, where individuals, families, and large groups can come and stay. Les Contes is a truly extraordinary place with an astonishing healing presence and is often said to be a catalyst for making important decisions. Welcome, Althia.
Hello, Karen and Leslie. Great to be here.
It's so nice to have you here. So I'm going to start with a question that we're asking of each of our guests, which is, for you personally, however you define it, when did you and how do you hear the divine feminine call in your life?
Well, I can actually remember the moment. I was sat on a beach in Rodine. Rodine is a little posh village just outside of Brighton in the UK, which is our little San Francisco. And I heard a voice. I was writing in my diary, and I heard a voice that says, "If you really want to know me, come to France." And I thought, that's strange. I'm on my Christ channel. So whenever I want to feel the presence of Christ, this is where I go to on the inside. But the voice was female. And I was not sure who I'm listening to. Is this the Mother Mary? Is this Mary Magdalene? Is it a female disciple? I don't know. But I do know within about 10 days, I was invited to where I am now, the Cathar region of France, because a yoga teacher had dropped down with some sickness and they needed another one quickly. So within those words, if you really want to know me, come to France, I was on a flight going to the very heart of Mary Magdalene country. And that's when I knew this is Our Lady.
Wow, that's spectacular. I love it. It's so simple too.
Yes.
Just a sentence.
Yes. And the ease in which I followed. I didn't need to question. I just went, oh, invite to France. I'm going to follow that voice.
Wow. Yeah. And I imagine it really changed. Well, obviously, it changed the trajectory of your life because you moved there. But probably it changed the way you thought about the Christ consciousness and all of it, really.
Oh, absolutely. It opened up a whole body, literally, of work and experience and depth and flavor. There I was following Jesus, Yeshua, the Christ, with the beautiful frequency of the Sacred Heart. absolutely fulfilled and content. This is my man, this is my beloved. And then along comes Mary Magdalene with these embodied practices. And it's as if she placed within me an encyclopedia of the feminine path of Christ consciousness. Did not know. I knew she carried a lot of longing, obviously. I did not know that she was bringing through all of these ancient practices, her and the rest of the Marys. So yes, it changed a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's so many places we could go with this, and I know you have such a depth to your work and all the things that you do. But I know that today you wanted to focus a little bit on what is dying right now, from the personal to the collective. So can you talk about that? Yeah, just explain a little bit more about that and how that relates to the divine feminine from your perspective.
Yes. Well, when you invited me on the show, I knew we were heading into December. And for me, December is a holy month of long periods of darkness, coldness, bitterness. I'm talking seasonal. And it makes you turn in for introspection and yes, going into those divine depths. And then I realized, like us all, that everywhere we turn now, there is this dying process. And the feminine, the sacred feminine, is at the helm of these periods. At first, as humans, we're not so keen on what I call the arrival of the Black Madonna, so the dying process in an embodied or mythical form. But should you befriend her, should you befriend these dark, cold, bitter times and not put up too much resistance, you will be taken through a beautiful velvety eye of the needle and come out the other side palpably more refined, palpably more humble, and just a more sort of sublime, tender version of yourself than when you first started.
Yeah.
And so it's all of this kind of rich conversation is perfect for December. In January even, actually.
Yeah. And in Canada, where I am, February, March, and sometimes April.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that is one of the keys, is the not resisting piece. Because we are taught, in the West to fear death, and we spend our whole lives living in a way of fearing it and then not fully really living full out, I feel.
Yes.
And it's a tough one because it is so embedded and ingrained. And so really returning to the divine feminine knowing of the rhythms of life, the cycles, the descent process, the seasonal rhythms, all of that, the lunar rhythms feels so important right now, especially.
Yes. And in our mythical past and initiatory rites, folk were taken really to the edge of dying in self-generated initiatory practices. So it's not perhaps how we're moving through the initiations these days, which is like a little blip or a little moment of discomfort, or, ooh, I'm sat in a cave for a few hours this afternoon. No, no, no. Our ancestors went fully there. And it wasn't guaranteed that you would survive the initiation. But when it's that intense, by golly, you're going to come out a shining brand new pin. And of course, we don't really, perhaps in a few secret corners and pockets of the world, that level of initiation is still unraveling. But mostly it's not. We've let it go. We deemed it as not important. And so the divine is, I feel, bringing us initiation through current world events.
Yes, I was just going to say,
We want to change. We're putting out this prayer, help, I want to change. Okay.
Yes, yes. And the last, what is it now? 3.5, almost 4 years,
Yeah.
have through different pieces just kept bringing us, I feel, into a dying of the old, a crumbling of systems and structures, and no stone unturned. Well, there probably are still more stones that are being unturned, and we don't necessarily see all of them.
Yes.
But it does feel like an initiation, a
Yes.
descent, a
Yes.
dying. So maybe we can kind of pull apart some of those pieces. What is and I fully recognize that they're all interrelated, but there's kind of something in a spectrum from the personal to the collective.
Yes. Well, I mean, one of the things I've pulled out and examined is relationships.
Mm.
Relationships are dying on every possible level. Um, Sexuality is dying, and not just my generation and my age group. I talk to 20 somethings, and they're like, yeah, no, we're not having sex either. And I'm like, what? So, our priorities are changing. What was once an enjoyable and woohoo, we're about to have sex, doesn't mean anything anymore. Consciousness is revealing more in intimacy and conversation, and perhaps, just like movement of the body. And, everything's just like dropping off. What's left? Um, and so, will we allow those big powers to go? Relationship, sexuality, to not have a frame or a title around it anymore, but to still uphold our moral compass and our dignity, not saying yes to things we don't really agree to, but less control, obviously, of that process. And I feel that, this is coming at us to what's happening in the Middle East. I'm seeing, as I said, the relational and the sexual dying process. And now that I'm getting into mid-50s, oh, health crisis. Oh, haven't had one of those before. Just came through one this summer, and, face to face with morality. Like, oh my goodness, am I looking at some time in hospital here? Heavens forbid, are they going to put me on medication? Things that just used to go straight past my awareness. And I'd say, oh, that's not for me. Yes, it's now for me. This stage of life is now opening up. And that's why I want to also talk about elderhood, because I feel there's a great big vacuum where elders once were, and is open again to be filled. But some folk might be hanging on to dear life, to what they think is their youth, and refusing to grow older. And there's those who think, oh, I'm mid-50s, time to die, and don't even think about inhabiting this vacuum that's calling us in, and just go for the quick and rapid decline into old age. So that's something I really want to, put my staff in the ground and say, I'm here for elderhood. I
Yes.
promise not to hold on to my youth. I will go there proudly proclaiming my age and all the bits and pieces that are falling off, and I'm not going to do anything about it. And here I am, still
Yeah.
alive, still
Yes.
here.
Yeah. It really feels like there's a both and in what you're saying. So on
Yes,
the one hand, proclaiming still your aliveness,
yes,
but proclaiming it inside of a new, like a dying of the old and a
yeah,
reclaiming of the new, a rebirthing of the new in
yeah.
elderhood.
Exactly right, exactly right.
Yeah.
Letting the youth die, and
Mhm.
being that little green shoot that's underneath that pile of autumnal leaves, that's actually being nourished by death,
Yes.
nourished by death, so
Yeah.
that a radiant being in all his or her elderhood, with all their wisdom, still being gathered, still being accumulated and shared openly. And
Yes. Yeah.
perhaps with a sense of steadiness to everything that's happening around us. So
Yeah.
those who are, jumping from left to right in their little pinball machine, like, oh, what do we do in this moment? There's some steady folk standing still,
Mm.
um,
Yes.
showing the
Yeah.
way.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's, to me, I call it the wise woman, but in mythology, it's the crone
Yes,
face of the triple goddess. There's many different names for it, but yeah.
yes,
And this pinball image is really standing out to me, and versus that kind of,
yes,
in here centered
yes.
approach. And I think this pinball also makes me think of the division that's been
Very
created.
good.
There's this sort of either or, when in fact,
Yes,
maybe what we should be looking at is a both and the
yes,
nuance, right? And the paradox in the world. It's a
yes,
much richer place to find wisdom than this, you're right, you're wrong. Here's a set of beliefs over here. Here's a set of beliefs over there. And if
yeah.
you can't mix and match at
No,
all.
no, no. Yeah, yeah. I like that, Karen. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, so where does that leave us as a woman in a female in a feminine body, or a man, who is interested in the richness of where we're headed in our dying to the old and our rebirth? What can we on an individual level do to really, bring in and call in this unnameable thing, this
Mm.
mystery of what we're becoming? What's our role?
Well, being a bit of I think I called myself an apostle of movement. I I love unknown movement. I love giving myself half an hour to play my most amazing classical music and just letting that body start its journey. And that is not only where I get the answers, it's where I become the answer.
Mm,
So I would start right there. I'd just drop like a little pebble in the pond, the pebble being my contemplation, the pond, my body. What does it mean to be an elder? Who am I in my elderhood? And then press play, close the eyes, and let her, the elder, come forward and not only show herself, but feel herself. I have this, well, I've heard it before actually. It's not really mine, but I piggyback it. It's called Somanout. So we know what an astronaut is. An astronaut goes to another planet, takes a sample, brings it back to Earth. And so a somanout is exactly the same thing. A somanout uses its body to slip into another dimension, grab a little sample of it, bring it back through movement, and then it integrates and becomes part of that person. So that is what I would be up to if you wanted some kind of good answer to that question.
mm. Yeah,
And of
that's
course,
beautiful.
you
Yeah.
got the double benefit of that slow, graceful, deep movement, absolutely pacifying the nervous system, getting us out of the flippers, getting us
Mhm.
into the center. And yeah, there's treasure there.
Mhm. Yeah. What about, this sort of cacophony of noise around us,
Mm.
this thing, that thing? What what do you feel about unplugging? Should we be unplugging? Should we be putting our stake in the ground? Is it both? You know?
Yeah. Well, you see, I've unplugged. I came out of London and I'm now here in the dark
Mm,
Pyrenees. It's nighttime here. The sky is wide open. There's no 5G here. It's impossible to get it through the mountain paths. So I have unplugged the best I can. You know, I'm still here, obviously, on Wi-Fi. Yeah, I am an advocate for unplugging, for finding that silence.
Mm.
Every single day, me and my husband are out in the mountains walking our 11 goats. And just before I jumped on with you, you might see I'm a bit pink. It's because, you know, I'm looking at the sun. I'm
Mm.
gazing at the sun through the forest. I
Beautiful.
couldn't go back. No way to the city life now.
Mm.
And of course, there's a little sacrifice in that because I'm only a little bit well known. If I was in London or LA, whoo, you know, I'd be up there with all the content, you know, churning out all the content, all the reels. I don't have time for that. I'm too busy walking goats. So there is a little dying that comes along with unplugging, but you get plugged into something else.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that is less of the pinball machine.
Mm. So when you tune in now and
Mm,
listen to that small, still voice within, what
yes.
do you hear about where we're headed collectively?
Hmm. I'll tell you. This is between me and you, although it's not, because I was contemplating it at the weekend. Um, I have a feeling that us women, us feminine, we're starting to like fill up with this sense of no more, especially when it comes to war and mindless killing. I really do feel there's going to be a straw that breaks the camel's back. And we're actually going to step in to positions of power. Maybe make a place for us and insert ourselves, or absolutely knock someone else off their pedestal and take charge. I really, utterly believe that. When enough people have died, something at the mother in us, it's going to be a thoughtless, a mindless state. It's going to be by the heart, by the heart, by the soul. And there's going to be this almighty switch.
Mm. Yeah.
Because I'm getting a little bit close. I really am, and I'm laughing and joking because you know I'm happy and I'm in a good mood today. But a few days ago, I was really, really there. And of course, there's not too many positions of power around here in the mountains.
Mm.
Good, luckily, London is safe. But yeah, I can see and feel myself doing something like that if I was still in London.
Mm.
I just wouldn't care anymore what the consequences are. I would assume authority and I would start organizing the life that is around me and being influenced me according to my feminine terms.
Mm.
And just put an end to this pile of bodies that seems to be building up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really hear you speaking of it's a different kind of power, right?
Yes,
It's
very much so.
very different.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
It's like a swing back, I would hope, into the harmony and sustainability of all life,
Yeah.
from ant to elephant, human being in between.
Mm. Yeah. And it can feel so far off when you get mired in what is going on right now. It can seem impossible. And yet there's just something. I
Yeah,
can feel it in you. And I know Leslie and I feel it. That's why we gathered women to talk about this. And I'm seeing a lot of divine feminine rising
yes,
events right now.
yes,
So there is something stirring, I feel.
yes. I had a little moment this summer. Attached to the house is a small chapel. And I have been afraid to really speak with authority on the nature of God. I can do it in a New Age way. I can even do it in a priestess way. But to actually stand in more of a traditional role and speak in a Christian way, So I went through possible sections of the Bible, like, why do I have this fear? And I found this piece from the Apostle Paul that said something along the lines of, women should remain silent. They must not preach and they must not teach. They are to sit silently beside their husbands in the house of God. And I went, there it is. There it is. That is what is haunting me. That is what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of someone calling me blasphemous, or, some male in a black dress and a big gold crucifix. As I got this nugget of discomfort, and overcome it because of what's happening in Israel and Palestine. This sense of, you simply must overcome this. You simply must be able to go into your own little chapel, and if anyone happens to be there online or in person, you're going to speak clear and brave and strong. And you don't need to mask it by being a New Ager or a priestess. You're going to speak on behalf of God.
Yes. And in the end, isn't it all the same? I mean, that when you get underneath dogma and how certain things have been, it's not a word, patriarchized,
Yeah.
patriated.
Yes.
A friend of mine said, we need to rematriate.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
The good
And
one.
yeah, I like that a lot.
Yes.
And I do know a fair bit about your work, having been part of some of your classes in the past few years, and I would say that where you're coming from it's a different kind of Christianity. It's
Yeah.
getting into the mystical,
Yes.
true, original,
Yes.
early understandings.
You got it. That early form, as it was just blossoming, no one had tampered with it. No one had fixed it into four corners. It was just the Sacred Heart on fire. There's such thing as a religion in these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. Yeah. So maybe I just feel like we can't have you leave without speaking of those times. And you do so much work with Mary Magdalene and the Cathars and that teaching. Is there something you wanted to share that you feel called to share today about that?
Well, maybe, a retelling of the prodigal daughter in a very summarized version. So the traditional story would say to us that when we're ready to return to the Father will welcome us home. He'll be standing at the front door. He'll open it and say, welcome home, my son, my daughter. All is well. We're happy to see us. But the early Christian tale would be that the Father sees us on the horizon, just coming over the hill, grabs his coat and boots, runs towards us at full pelt with our robe, ring, and sandals, and a little picnic. And by the time we actually meet, he grabs us, spins us around a few times, brushes our hair, puts our robe over us, slips our ring on our finger, bends down, and buckles our sandals. Now, that's the one I'm talking about. Totally different. And even to say it, makes my hairs rise.
Mm.
So to me, that's truth. That is the presence of the Father or Mother.
Mm.
It's not going to wait for us return and say, "Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you've returned." No, no, no. Whoom, straight towards us at full pelt.
Mm. Yeah. So there's a real sense there of like equality, like the divine recognizing the divine. And
Yes.
that
Yes.
namaste kind of feeling. We are
Yes.
all one.
Yeah. And it also that mother, it's like when a
Yes.
child falls over, the mother straight there,
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, there's a mothery
Mm.
kind of feeling to this father.
Yes. Yeah.
And the joy, oh yes, that's a new element. The joy and
Mm.
celebration of our return. Happiness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like what you're speaking to is really what some people call that aspect of the second coming, but the idea that it's not a man in the sky or a historical figure rebirth necessarily, but it's like it's the within us, the divine, the balanced divine, feminine, masculine
Yeah.
birther, as Neil
Yeah.
Douglas Klotz says. I don't know if you're familiar. I'm sure you are with Prayers of
Yes.
the Cosmos and that work. That it's not, there's an element that is much more mystical and much less out here or masculine, and that we are the ones bringing through the dying. Maybe it's through the dying, right, of
Yes.
the old. We are able to be those women and men running
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
field towards and meeting, and that's how we're going to evolve,
Yes.
birth the new world.
Absolutely. But like you said earlier, it could be both. I'm
Mm,
sitting with both. It's like, whoa, it could be an infusion of Christ
mm,
consciousness within me that's spilling out into everyone around. And it could also be the arrival of another male or another female.
mm.
And I'm like, oh, this is good. So I'm really open
Yeah.
for either or both and everything.
Yes.
'Cause I
Yeah,
don't
that's
I don't
great.
know. I mean, when he first came, everyone was expecting a flipping king. He was expecting a king and overthrow the Romans, and that's not how he came. So we might be like,
Mm.
"Oh, got that one wrong again." But I
Yeah.
do know there's gonna be I don't know. I'd love to believe joy is
Mm,
gonna be a very palpable presence that goes along with it all.
mm. Yeah. Yes, joy. Yes.
Like tears, you cry, your
Yeah.
humble joy. You
Yes.
have been bulldozed by revelation, and you are not even touched. Your heart has been ripped open
Mm,
because of the truth that has just plundered into it.
mm,
And it's so sweet, and it's so simple, and it's so innocent.
mm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Lovely for everyone.
Yes. Yes. You're getting me tearing up.
Good.
Thank you. This has been so great. I've just loved how you bring this alive and the hopefulness that even in the
Mm,
death and the dying and the destruction that we're seeing, there is an opening. There's light. There's a passageway from through the descent into a grand awakening. Really
mm.
feels like that. So
Thank you, Karen.
thank you. I Before you go, I know you have a free gift that's bubbling up inside of you.
Yes, yes. It's going to be a spoken transmission, and I think it's called something like Plundering the Divine Depths.
Mm,
Wow, fancy that, finding divinity at your lowest point.
mm.
So if that sounds like something you'd like to accompany me on through the spoken word, click the link.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure that we have that link available for everybody in the notes in our event portal.
Mhm.
And is there anything else you want to tell us about? I know you're doing a lot of beautiful work and transmissions that you have on offer.
Not really. I'm riding away during the winter months. And obviously, with the house, lots and lots of visitors where incredible things happen. So it's like a little spiritual bed and breakfast. It's not really a bed and breakfast, it's a little bit of a blossoming mystery school. So that's it, really. You'll find me in these mountains.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
I hope to
Coming back
visit
home.
sometime. Be beautiful. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you. We'll put up where people can find you. We've got some links, your website, Alethea, and then Les Contes for the not B&B, but mystical school, mystery school, and Facebook, Alethea Pistis Sophia, and Instagram. So people can find you. And if not there, they can come to you in person and find you amongst the goats.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's
Yeah.
been lovely to speak to you and to connect and to dive into the depths with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting.
So thank you to all of you for joining us and spending this time with us. If you found us by chance on YouTube and are not registered for the event, please go ahead and do that. You'll find us in the show notes so you can join us for the other speakers as well. So we'll see you again. Thank you so much once again. Bye for now.